Take the most famous Cyclops from Greek mythology, the barbaric and ogreish Polyphemus, combine him with the most famous Cyclops from Marvel Comics, Cyclops, a mutant who can shoot energy beams from his eyeballs, pew, 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 and you'll end up with a character approaching Balor Nasul Niva, or Balor of the Evil Eye. A supernatural being by many names, Balor, also Balar or Balor, is known variously throughout early and medieval Irish literature as Balor Burgdirk, Balor of the Piercing Eye, Balor Baimnek, Balor the Smiter or Balor of the Blows, Balor Belkmanek, Balor the Strong Smiter or Balor of the Strong Blows, Balor Ua Nate, Balor grandson of Nate, and Balor Macdot Mac Nate, Balor son of Dot, son of Nate. But of all of these, it is the Evil Eye moniker for which he is best known, and for good reason. According to historian Peter Beresford Ellis, Balor, quote, had one eye whose gaze was so malevolent that it destroyed whoever gazed upon it, end quote. As the ruler and most formidable member of the Fomorians, also known as the Fomorai, more on them in a minute, Balor infamously leads his monstrous race into battle against the Tuatha Danann, the good Irish gods, if you will, during the Second Battle of Moytora. Balor would ultimately suffer defeat at the hands of his own grandson Lu, as had been prophesied, but not before slaying the leader of the Tuatha Danann, Nuada of the Silver Hand. Despite being an unkingly king, as author Fiona MacLeod dubs him, Balor is a crucial figure in Irish mythology, not only because of his physical presence and brutal nature, but also because of what he sets in motion. Without Balor, there is no Irish god of many talents Lu. And without Lu, there is no Irish hero Cuchulainn, arguably the greatest hero in all of Irish mythology, and certainly the greatest chariot warrior. Indeed, generations of characters from Irish mythology can trace their lineages back to Balor. Without him there, stirring up trouble at the very beginning, subsequent Irish myths would lose much of their meaning. And while scholars agree that Balor of the Evil Eye was the mythological king of the Fomorians, or at least one of its two major chieftains, perhaps ruling alongside Indech, son of Didamond, whether or not Balor qualifies as a god is another matter entirely. But look at me, getting ahead of myself. Let us return to Balor's roots, because in order to truly understand Balor, we first need to understand the race of supernatural beings to which he belongs, the Fomorians. And in order to understand the Fomorians, we need to have at least a basic understanding of the earliest of the four cycles of Irish mythology, the redundantly named Mythological Cycle. The overarching narrative of said cycle is the settlement of ancient Ireland, or rather the recurring invasions of Ireland. As detailed in the 11th century Lever Gabala Éireann, the Book of the Taking of Ireland, commonly known as the Book of Invasions, there are 6 invading groups in total: the Cessair, the Partholonians, the Numidians, the Firbolg, the Tuatha Danann, and, last of all, the supposed progenitors of Ireland's modern human population, the Milesians. Notably absent from that list, the Fomorians, or as author Ella Young styles them, the ugly, misshapen folk of the Fomor. As mentioned in my article on giants from Irish myth and legend, which you can read over on irishmyths.com, the Fomorians are monstrous marauders originating from beneath the sea, or, in some tellings, beneath the earth. And while they never settle permanently in Ireland, they raid the island repeatedly, making a habit of tormenting its inhabitants. To quote Young, the Fomorians had come into Ireland and spread themselves over the country like a pestilence. They had stolen the cauldron of plenty and carried it away to their own land, where Balor of the Evil Eye reigned. They had taken the Spear of Victory also, and the only one of the 4 great jewels of sovereignty remaining to the Dadanans was the Stone of Destiny. It was hidden deep in the earth of Ireland, and because of it, the Fomorians could not altogether conquer the country. Nor could they destroy the Dadanans, though they drove them from their pleasant palaces and hunted them through the glens and valleys like outlaws." End quote. So, as the story goes, it is the Stone of Destiny, or Lia Fáil, one of the famed 4 treasures or jewels of the Tuatha Danann, that protects the divine race from a full-on Fomorian invasion. But to be clear, the Fomorians had been wreaking havoc in Ireland well before the arrival of the Tuatha, extracting taxes from the local population as far back as the time of the Numidians. And in case you were wondering, no, these were no ordinary taxes. As Scottish scholar and folklorist J.A. McCulloch explained, quote, From Tory Island, the Fomorians ruled Ireland and forced the Numidians to pay them annually on the eve of Samhain, November 1st, 2/3 of their corn and milk and of the children born during the year. If the Fomorians are gods of darkness, or preferably aboriginal deities, the tribute must be explained as a dim memory of sacrifice offered at the beginning of winter when the powers of darkness and blight are in the ascendant." End quote. Clearly, these gods of darkness, who, to McCulloch's point, perhaps originated in the minds of the ancient Irish as manifestations of winter and blight, did not mess around. But are the Fomorians really gods? And by extension, should we consider Balor of the Evil Eye an Irish god? True, Ellis clearly defines Balor as a, quote, god of death, and refers to the Fomorians more generally as, quote, lords of darkness and death. But the thing is, Irish mythology already has a god of death. In fact, and as I explained in an earlier video, it has at least 3. Bile, more on him later, Don, and the Morrigan, the latter of whom actively fought against the Fomorians during the Second Battle of Moytora. Yes, Balor of the Evil Eye is, as his name suggests, evil. What's more, it's obvious that he benefits from a supernatural ocular ability, specifically the ability to kill with merely a glance. Here's how Irish dramatist and folklorist Lady Gregory described Balor's superpower and its origin. Quote, "There was a power of death in one of his eyes, so that no person could look at it and live. It is the way it got that power. He was passing one time by a house where his father's druids were making spells of death, and in the window being open he looked in, and the smoke of the poisonous spells was rising up, and it went into his eye. And from that time he had to keep it closed unless he wanted to be the death of some enemy." End quote. Notably, Lady Gregory never called Balor a god, referring to him instead as the, quote, chief king of the Fomor. Writing under the pseudonym A.E., Irish poet George William Russell described Balor in a similar vein, noting that Balor was, quote, the prince of the dark powers, and that his eye, quote, turned every living thing it rested on into stone, end quote. But dark powers alone do not a deity make. Just ask Medusa, one of the Gorgons from Greek mythology. It's curious that Russell interpreted Balor as having the same power as a Gorgon, a glance that doesn't simply kill its victims but transforms them into statues, tomb statues, because this is not a typical Balor characteristic. Murderous eye stuff? Yes. Turning people to stone? Not so much. Regardless, the parallels between Balor and characters from Greek mythology do not end with Medusa nor with the aforementioned Cyclops Polyphemus. In the broadest sense, Balor and his Fomorians are perhaps most similar to the Greek Titans, towering proto-gods, or arguably gods in their own right, who, in addition to giving rise to all manner of mythological monster, including Cerberus, the Chimera, and the Hydra, birthed the first Olympians: Demeter, Hades, Hera, Hestia, Poseidon, and Zeus. The Fomorians and the Titans have both been referred to as the old gods of their respective mythologies. They were the first iterations of what powerful, supernaturally gifted beings could be. They are giants, monsters, and both races are eventually replaced by more humanoid, more beautiful, more technology-driven pantheons. The Tuatha in Irish mythology, who count the spear and sling-wielding Lugh amongst their ranks, and the Olympians in Greek mythology, who count the trident-wielding Poseidon amongst their ranks. In both mythologies, these new gods take on ideal forms. You may already be familiar with representations of the Olympians with their literally and metaphorically chiseled bodies. The Tuatha are similarly fit. To quote Ellis, "They are tall, beautiful, and fair. They are superior to humans in their physical strength, power, and handsomeness. They are somewhat reminiscent of the description of the ancient Celts which survive in the writings of Greeks and Romans. They appear basically as the ancestors of the people rather than their creators." End quote. Balor of the Evil Eye does not look like that. In the popular imagination, Balor has become a gargantuan, barrel-chested demon often depicted with bulging muscles. Marvel Comics, for its part, opted for an overtly devilish look for its version of Balor, furnishing the Fomorian king's bald head with horns while also giving him cloven feet, a goatee, and a reddish-pinkish skin tone. DC Comics went the other route, giving its version of Balor bluish skin, long white hair, and a more symmetrical, humanoid, but still extremely buff body, characteristics commonly seen in depictions of deities across cultures. Funnily enough, both of these depictions of Balor are missing a key element of Balor's appearance. The defining element of his appearance, some might say, the giant eye in the middle of the dude's face. An eye so big, according to Lady Gregory, Balor needed a team of people to help him open it so he could unleash his death stare on the battlefield. And I quote, "The men that were with him would lift the eyelid with a ring of ivory." End quote. Gross. Meanwhile, the original text, the Ka Moitura, specifies that, quote, 4 men used to lift up the lid of the eye with a polished handle which passed through its lid, end quote. Even grosser. Granted, in other early Irish texts, Balor's evil eye is covered with a series of protective metal shields, or in some cases, fabric cloths, which could then be stripped away to unleash the eye's power. As Irish folklorist and Professor Dahi O'Hogan noted, quote, "He had a single eye in his forehead, a venomous, fiery eye. There were always 7 coverings over this eye. One by one, Balor removed the coverings. With the first covering, the bracken began to wither. With the second, the grass became copper-colored. With the third, the woods and timber began to heat. With the fourth, smoke came from the trees. With the fifth, everything grew red. With the sixth, it sparked. With the seventh, they were all set on fire, and the whole countryside was ablaze." End quote. It's worth noting that in this incarnation of Balor, the evil eye in Balor's forehead is his only eye. He is a one-eyed monster who is presumably blind most of the time, when he's not busy incinerating countrysides, that is. However, in other iterations of the character, Balor has 2 regular eyes in addition to the evil eye in his forehead. Renderings of this version of Balor make him look as though he has a mystic third eye. Putting Balor's eye aside, the rest of his appearance is largely up for debate. Given his Fomorian background, we can assume that he too is ugly and misshapen, so it's safe to say a chiseled, symmetrical Balor is out of the question. I'd also argue that as one of the old gods, Balor should be depicted not as smooth and shiny like the DC version of Balor, but as wrinkled and battle-worn. One final caveat before you finalize that mental image you have forming in your mind's eye: Balor could shapeshift. Or at a minimum, he was able to do it once. Did he turn into a wolf? No. A dragon? Nope. A giant? Actually, according to Ellis, all of the Fomorians, quote, appeared in the guise of giants during the Second Battle of Moitura, but that's not the time I'm thinking of. In the years leading up to that famous battle, Balor transforms into a little kid with red hair so he can steal a magical cow named Glas Gevnin from the Tuatha Danann. This would end up being a bad idea. The Irish god Cian, nicknamed Scalbalb, journeys to Balor's fortress on Tory Island to recover the cow. In the process, Cian encounters and becomes intimate with Balor's daughter, Enyu, who Balor had locked away in a crystal tower. See, Balor's wife, the Fomorian prophetess Cathlin of the Crooked Teeth, had prophesied that their future grandchild would one day kill Balor and bring about the end of the Fomorian race. So in an effort to prevent that grandchild from ever being born, Balor decides to lock up their only daughter in a tower. He hadn't counted on Cian sneaking in with the help of a druidess, Byrog, who dresses Cian up as a woman. Long story short, Enyu gives birth to Lu, who is raised and trained in secret by the sea god Menon and Maclear, and it is Lu who eventually, or some might say inevitably, leads the Tuatha Danann into battle against Balor and the Fomorians. In some accounts, Lu slays his grandfather Balor with the Gaea Sail, an enchanted spear that never misses its mark and always returns to its thrower, much like Thor's hammer Mjolnir in Norse mythology. In other accounts, Lu kills Balor with the Talum, a concrete ball made from sea sand mixed with the blood of toads, bears, and vipers, which he hurls with a sling. FYI, you can learn more about these weapons in my video on the most wondrous weapons from Irish mythology. Anyway, in all accounts, Lu is depicted sending a projectile, be it spear or ball, directly into Balor's evil eye just as the Fomorian leader is about to unleash his death gaze. After killing Balor, Lu lops off his head, as one does, and according to the Duanera of Finn, the Book of the Lays of Finn, the head is placed in an oak tree where the venom from Balor's pierced evil eye then soaks into the bark. A hero from a later cycle of Irish mythology, Finn McCool, star of the Fenian cycle, will go on to carry a shield made from that tree's Balor-tainted timber. Granted, in another version of events, Balor's severed head is set on a rock, and all of the goop dripping out of it forms a lake. Possibly Gweedora Loch in County Donegal, although County Sligo's Loch na Súil definitely feels like a stronger contender, at least from a poetic standpoint, as its name translates to Lake of the Eye. Also in County Sligo, one can find several pillars and cairns strewn across a great plain, a plain that is alleged to be the site of the aforementioned battle. Its name? Moitura Nav Fomorach, the plain of the towers of the Fomorians. So while Balor is decidedly not immortal in the Irish myths, his legacy lives on regardless, enshrined in Irish place names. As to whether Balor is a true Irish god or mere monster, here's one final clue that may tip the scales in favor of Balor's divinity. Some scholars believe Balor was based, at least in part, on the Gaulish-Celtic god Belinus, cognate with the later Irish god of death, Bile, who I mentioned earlier, hence the similarities in their names. According to O'Hogan, it's possible Balor is derived from the Proto-Celtic word Baleros, meaning the flashing one. And wouldn't you know it, the name Belinus is most commonly interpreted as meaning the shining one or the bright one. So it's certainly possible there's some connective tissue there. Not like disgusting evil eye connective tissue, but the etymological kind. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That really helps. And if you want to learn more about supernatural ne'er-do-wells from Irish mythology, there's a book for that. It's called Irish Monsters in Your Pocket, a tiny little book about Irish dragons, werewolves, vampires, banshees, headless horsemen, and other beastly beings, and it's linked in the description below. I've also got videos on a lot of those monsters right here on the Irish Myths channel. As always, my name is I.E. Kneverday, editor of the short story collection Neon Druid and creator of IrishMyths.com. Thanks for coming out.
Pew pew pew!